Hello students, welcome back to our English class. In this video, we will be studying the next chapter, that is Nelson Mandela, his long walk to freedom. This lesson is from your CBSE Grade 10 English text, First Flight. So let's get started. A brief introduction about the author. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary political leader and philanthropist who served as president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid by tackling institutionalized racism and promoting racial reconciliation. So that is something about the author Nelson Mandela. This chapter is an extract from his autobiography Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom. So in this chapter, it provides us with a glimpse of his early life, his education, 30 years in prison, and the pains he had suffered in his young age. So this chapter narrates his fight for the freedom of his own people who were tortured by the whites. 10th May was the day of freedom for South Africa because Nelson Mandela was supposed to take oath as the first black president of South Africa. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. Leaders from all around the world gathered there to witness the swearing-in ceremony of Nelson Mandela as the first black president. The inauguration ceremony took place in sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. For many years, it had been the seat of white supremacy. Only the whites could sit there, make decisions. But now, it is different. It was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors because people from different race, background, and nations came together to witness the installation of South Africa's first democratic, non-racial government. On that lovely autumn day, he was accompanied by his daughter Zinani. So on the podium, Mr. de Klerk was the first person who took oath as the second deputy president, followed by Mr. Thabo Mbeki, who sworn in as the first deputy president of South Africa. Then comes Mr. Nelson Mandela's turn, who took an oath as the first black president of South Africa. In front of all the people who were gathered there, he promised to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the people. He also promised to make the nation free from poverty, deprivation, suffering, and all sorts of discrimination. After he had taken the oath, South African jets displayed impressive military power and showed the loyalty of military to democracy. The highest military generals saluted him. He recollects that not so many years before they would not have saluted him but arrested him. After the spectacular display by the South African military jets, it was followed by the playing of the two national anthems. The whites sang Nkosi Sikelel, the old song, and the blacks sang Die Stem, the new song which marked the end of the ceremony. Nelson Mandela recollects about days gone by which will soon be part of history, where the whites had formed a system of racial dominance against the blacks. So this system, the policy of apartheid is a political system that separates people according to their race. So it is a policy of racial segregation or racial separation. So this policy, which was created by the whites, it created a deep and lasting wound on his country and people But now, after a long struggle, a new system that recognized the rights and freedom of all people was formed. Mandela regretted the loss of thousands of people and remembered their sacrifices for the freedom from discrimination. The policy of this policy of apartheid, it created a deep and lasting wound in his country and on his people. So they will spend many years, if not generations, in order to recover from this profound hurt. But the decades of this oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that is, it produced people, men of great courage, uncommon courage, wisdom, and generosity, like those freedom fighters, like Oliver Tambos, Walter Sisulu, Chief Lutuilu, etc. He said that the country is rich in minerals, but its greatest wealth is its people. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Mandela said that people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than hate. So he goes on to give his own example on his own experience. When he was in the prison, during his darkest time in prison, he and his comrades, they were pushed to their limits. When they were pushed to their limits, he could see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. If not for a very long time, just even for a tiny little bit of second, but he said that it was enough to reassure him and to keep him going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden, but now it can never be extinguished. In life, every man has two obligations. The first one, obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children. The second obligation, he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. But in a country like South Africa, he said that it was almost impossible for a man of his birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. A man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was taken away from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart. So he said that in attempting to serve his people, he found that he was prevented from fulfilling his obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. Now let us look at the concept of freedom by Mandela. So according to Mandela, freedom has many aspects, like for a kid, it is to run and play. For him as a child, freedom means free to play in the fields near his mother's hut, free to swim in the clear streams that ran through his village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the slow-moving bulls. As long as he obeyed his father and abided by the customs of his tribe, he was not troubled by the laws of man or God. As a young man, when he grew older, as a young man and as a student, he wanted freedom only for himself, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what he pleased, and go where he chose. So for an adult, it is to fulfill the needs of his own and his family. But soon he realized that such freedom was only an illusion. He realized that his brothers and sisters who looked like him, who were black, they were not free at all. They were being discriminated, humiliated. So he joined the African National Congress. That is when the hunger for his own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of his people. He desired that everyone should be given the right to live his life with dignity and respect. So in order to attain that freedom, he transformed himself from a frightening young man into a bold one, from a law-abiding attorney to a criminal, from a family-loving husband into a man without a home, from a life-loving man to live like a monk. He wanted the oppressors and the oppressed to be liberated, as no one is free if one is taking someone else's freedom. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. A person is not truly free if he is taking someone else's freedom. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So real freedom means equal rights for everyone. So that is all about this lesson. I hope you have learned something through this. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care and stay safe.